This is a room of level 154 monsters, which is Sigil 100, the hardest difficulty in the game. And let's go ahead and see how this works with the bouncing arrows with the unique item called Eagle Horn. You must have this in order for it to work, but it will be a targetable unique that you can farm from the Beast in Ice. So you can see over there on the screen what you can get from the Beast in Ice. So this item is absolutely going to be required for this build to run. It's a penetrating shot build using the unique Eagle Horn. But let's go ahead and hop right into the build. Alright guys, let's go over the best build for penetrating shot in Season 2 of Diablo. So, starting right off, I want to start off the video by going over the biggest buff, the big change that Rogue got that is insanely powerful. The big thing that we got for Rogue is the new bonus to Victimize. So, I gotta go over the full effect of this. So, it has a lucky hit ability where dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has up to a 45% chance to cause an explosion, dealing 23% of the original damage to them and surrounding enemies. Victimize damage is increased by 120% of your damage versus vulnerable bonus. Penetrating shot actually has one of the highest lucky hit chances, and if you scale it just a little bit, you can get this to be about a 25% chance. Even though it says 45, remember it's got to work off lucky hit, which is a 50%, and just with a little bit of scaling you can get it to be about 25% chance to actually work on hit, and that's going to make it so you're going to be dealing these explosions. The gameplay, just as a heads up that you guys are seeing, is from Season 1, but I wanted to have this video ready for you guys. In fact, you guys were asking me for the build guide while I was streaming, so this is the exact one that I was playing on the stream. So what it does, and the difference between this and Twisting Blades, because some people watching this and they were like, is this build better than Twisting Blades? Because I'm clearing out content super fast. And even though in the gameplay, which is Hell Tides, which has no bouncing mechanics because there's really no walls in the Hell Tides to bounce the arrows off of, once you see later in the video, we're going to be doing a dungeon and you can see how good this is. It's going to be bouncing off of walls and off screening multiple enemies, and it's fantastic. I mean, it clears out content. So the gameplay does show off the Barber. However, Victimize is basically going to be Barber. I wasn't using Victimize in the gameplay. Victimize is going to be buffed in the new season, which was going to be coming out later today. So I wanted this video to be ready for you, so you'll basically get the effect of Barber. Now, normally with Barber, you have to wait till the enemy either dies or that, up to 2 to 4 seconds duration ends. The thing that's awesome with Victimize, you can have it happen multiple times, you can happen to have overlaps, and since the arrow is bouncing, you can hit multiple times with the same actual attack, which is going to be massive. So Victimize is going to be one of the most powerful things. I do want to give a shout out to Close Quarters Combat. This is actually pretty good as well. If you guys may be interested in running this, it's optional. But a lot of people want to know the difference between this and Twisting Blades. What is better? This build objectively is going to be faster inside of dungeons and just clearing out content in general, because if you play Twisting Blades, you have to impale the monster, it has to then come out, then it has to activate the spin to get your maximum DPS. Whereas this, you shoot anywhere from 1 to 3 arrows, and most of the time the targets will be dead. And that's going to be overall much faster in terms of its responsiveness. Do you want to go and mention on bosses with this build though? There is going to be a difference because the boss usually spawns in the very middle of the screen, right? The arrow isn't going to have chances to really bounce and hit the target multiple times, with the exception of if the boss spawns in ads. If it spawns in that little crater area and that has those little bone walls, then yeah, you will absolutely melt the boss. But that's kind of out of your control. You can drag the boss to the corner, but overall, just spam on your attacks. You're going to be melting the boss eventually anyways, but I do want to say that in theory, on bosses in general, this build will be slower than Twisting Blades, but it will be 1000% way faster than Twisting Blades in terms of fighting inside of the dungeons, which again, you guys will see in a second. I want to show off in the very beginning the area that this build would be the worst in, and it's still not even bad at all. So now that we got that out of the way, I just want to give kind of like a disclosure here in terms of, is Twisting Blades better? Is this build better? I've uploaded so many builds on Twisting Blades already, and I'll also pin it down below. There's no change with Twisting Blades, but you can get Victimized if you want to as well, because it's going to be a way to scale up massive amounts of damage anyway. So starting right off, in terms of the skills, we have some options. Obviously, we have to be playing Penetrating Shot, and that's it. The rest of the stuff is totally up to you. If you want to run Dash, if you want to run Shadow Step, if you want to run Poison Imbue, Cold Imbue. I personally like to run Cold Imbue just because we can build up the stagger bar, and Poison can help against elites because you can bounce it off the walls multiple times and you get all the poison procs and it's just going to die really fast. However, if the elite is in a group, now this absolutely destroys trash mobs, but if there is a elite and there are multiple small monsters, yeah, you're just going to be blowing them up really fast anyway, so you don't even need a proc it. But for the sake of it, if you want to go ahead and have other skills, you can feel free to go ahead and do so. So starting right off, as far as the skills go that I can recommend, you can run Heartseeker, you can run anything that can apply vulnerability. If you want to play Puncture, that's totally fine as well. Heartseeker does get a buff anyways, and we're going to be playing vulnerability with the Vampiric power, so I'm not really too worried about applying vulnerability, even though we'll have exploit in terms of the Paragon board. So you can run whatever basic skill or generator that you want. I like Heartseeker because it does apply a buff to our character. And then I really like Shadow Clone, Poison Imbue, then we have Dash and Cold Imbue. But again, you can mix and match whatever one you want. You can see in the gameplay. I'm kind of messing around with different things. If you want to drop your generator, hey, by all means go for it and just run like Shadow Step just to break CC because you'll get unstoppable. But pretty much we'll have permanent unstoppable, and I'll show you guys that in a second. For the specialization, I like to run preparation so we can have more uptime on the Shadow Clone. I really like Shadow Clone. It's really great overall, just helps you clear out more content. And I'm going to kind of highlight some of the best parts of the build, and it's the fastest build pretty much that I've played for the Rogue in general because it clears things out super fast. If you want to, you can play combo points. If you want to, you can play Inner Sight. Kind of find it unnecessary because as far as Inner Sight goes, you're going to have unlimited energy, and I'll show you guys how we get that. So in terms of the equipment, we're going to be running the Mangler's Aspa. You'll also see the gear stat priorities that you kind of want on the pieces of gear. Since resistances are going to be a thing, I'm going to show you guys kind of where you can get resistances. The only exception is on the boots, it's going to have cold resist on it, so you don't want to try to roll cold res. But if like your helmet has shadow and fire instead of poison, it's fine. Don't worry too much. It just has to roll 2 of the resistances. So in terms of the helmet, we're going to run Manglers. This gives us a lucky hit chance to actually apply daze to the enemy, which is a crowd control, which actually will give us extra resource. And on top of that, it'll also have the ability to knock down the enemies, and since victimizes explosions, will also count as additional sources of damage, and you can maybe hopefully get more of them. I'm not sure if it's going to consider it direct damage. It might be like secondary damage, but for the most part, it's going to be hitting them so many dang times, especially if you're going to be shooting out and having these arrows come out from the sides with one of the aspects. You're going to get this quite often. Sometimes I'm seeing some of the elites, they'll just get knocked down again and again. They have no chance to actually fight, which is pretty hilarious. But yeah, the Mangler's aspect is great because we need some sort of way to apply daze. And then as far as another aspect, we're running Umbrus over here. So you'll see that I don't even run Dark Shroud on our bar, but I have at all times 100% uptime. This build will have 100%, what's over 100% crit in most circumstances. And the reason why I say most is some of these need these other things to apply, like the enemy has to be knocked down to get some sort of bonus. And there's a lot of different ways to get over 100% crit, so don't worry, we're going to get easy 100% crit with this build. So yeah, Umbrus is great, because when we crit, we're going to be getting a Dark Shroud. And then we have the Edge Master's aspect for the gloves over here. And if you want to read the gear stat priority, just so I don't make this video longer than necessary, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of mouse over them, and you guys can see up on the screen, and just go to the build website. I'll have all the info for you. Next up, Tibaults Will. We don't even know the rest of the stats, but I don't need to even read them. You tell me that I get basically half of my resource every time I roll, or if I actually get unstoppable, we're going to get a huge amount of extra damage, and we're going to be getting that with one of the bonuses on the newer powers that is in the Vampiric powers. It's called Metamorphosis, and it's like cut off here, but anyways, when we evade, we turn into bats, and that's going to grant us unstoppable for 4 seconds, and that's going to allow us to proc Tibaults. Tibaults was going to give us increased damage while we are unstoppable, and yeah, it's like basically free unstoppable for the entire game. And you have the stats on the item could literally be nothing, and I'd still probably run these, but you gain 50 primary resource, so this is a great way to basically get unlimited resource against the bosses. Now on the non-bosses, we're going to be getting a lot of resource anyways, but this is just going to help out. And then Pence and Greaves, because there's really nothing else that gives us like this much damage. And then we're running Eagle Horn. This is going to be required if you want to min-max. It lets you bounce all the things. It also gives you vulnerable damage, which we actually do want. And then it also gives you a high amount of crit strike chance, which is great. And then for the gems, we're going to be running Emeralds. And then you can run rubies or topazes if you want to. And then in the jewelry slot, you actually want to run diamonds. Right now, it's selected as seasonal, but right now, I'm making this video before the season comes out, so it just shows up as this. But throw diamonds in all your piece of gear, you will get 100% resistance. I have a guide that shows you how to get, well, it's 100% of the max value, which is technically 70. You can push it to 85 if you want to go beyond, but we're just shooting for the max value, which is 70, the base cap that you can get. And then as far as the amulet, we're looking for disobedience. It's actually getting buffed in the season, which is actually quite great. We're looking for the aspect of the umbral, and that's going to also grant us extra resource when we crowd control. Daze is crowd control, and also applying the chill is going to be crowd controlled as well, or if we freeze them. And then running trick shot. So this, normally you'd throw this in your two-handed if you happen to not have eagle horn, like you want to level up with this build, throw it in your two-handed weapon. But this is massive. It's going to make it so penetrating shot will split off to the sides, and this will also deal additional damage. And I'm hoping this works with manglers. I'm actually not sure, but pretty much for the most part, things are getting knocked down, and we just get extra crit. So it's great for that. And then we are also running accelerating, so more attack speed once we crit, and we have 100% crit in here, so it's really easy. And then we have vengeful aspect, which is going to be making it so when we make an enemy vulnerable, we have extra chance to get more crit. Alternatively, you can actually run something different if you want to in this slot, because you will actually overcap on your crit, but for the most part, choose what you want to for this one. This one's kind of a flex slot over here. Now, as far as the Vampiric powers goes, we want Ravenous. This is like one of the best ones in the entire game over here. And let me see if I can actually make this like a little bit bigger, because it's kind of like messed up. It's the way it's scaled. Okay, here we go. I don't know why it's like just going off the screen. Anyways, I'll just tell you the effect of Ravenous, because it looks like it's having some sort of like issue here. So Ravenous makes it so you have a lucky hit, up to 20% chance to increase your attack speed by 40% of your movement speed for 6 seconds. Then we have Prey on the Weak, and that is going to make it so we deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies, and enemies are going to be vulnerable while they're affected by a vampiric curse. And then Metamorphosis, sorry again, it's cut off, I don't know why, but it's when you evade, you turn into bats, which gives you unstoppable, and it's going to deal some damage, and it's going to inflict the enemies with a vampiric curse. And then we have Undying, which is going to make it so casting skills heals us, so we have some sort of sustain. I really like this one, it's great. And then Anticipation is just for ultimate skill cooldown reduction. If you want to run whatever else you want to run in the other slot, the only ones I really think that are really important are Ravenous, Prey on the Weak, and Metamorphosis for the build. Undying for tankiness. Anticipation is probably the one I would swap if I was to think about swapping. In terms of any of the skill tree changes, so basically you can start off going with Heartseeker or Puncture, and then obviously it's a penetrating shot build, so you're going to want to max that out. And again, I'm just going to leave like the website here. I'm going to explain kind of the more important things. You need to get concussive, and you just need to get trick attacks, because it's going to give you extra crit strike chance for 3 seconds if you knock them down. They only need to be knocked down for 0.5 seconds. If you want to put more into it and you want them knocked down for more, sure, but I find it kind of useless, because against bosses, well, you're not going to be able to knock them down, and most of the elites will just die anyways, so it doesn't really matter too much unless you're pushing Sigil 100 and you don't really have the high damage. But even at Sigil 100, you can melt content very fast with this build, especially because the Victimize passive is just massively buffed. And then again, Dark Shroud, you can get extra movement speed, or you can get extra crit, and in the link for the build, it'll show you guys exactly how we can overcap on our crit. And then I just like to get Poison Imbue, because it just adds a little bit more damage to it. Let's go ahead and watch some of the dungeons. So this is just in Older's Cave. This is just I just walked into it from the open world, so it's not like a Sigil 100, but like you can kill things very fast. It's just I didn't have a Sigil 100 for this cave. But the reason why I want to show you guys gameplay of this cave over here is because the cave has these very narrow areas. It's basically like Diablo 2, like the Maggot's Lair. The arrows are just bouncing. This is where the build actually excels here, and I wanted to show off Helltide at the start, because, well, the Helltides would be the worst area for this build to actually function. But you can see in these areas, it will just shred content. It's super, super, super fast. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. But on bosses in particular, it's not going to absolutely one-shot them, because you may not get the ability to have it bounce off the walls in every scenario. However, if there are multiple enemies, the explosions are just going to be great. I mean, just look at that pop. I mean, do you get that responsiveness with Twisting Blade? Absolutely not. It just doesn't happen, and that's because Twisting Blades, you have to impale, then it has to come out, then it has to spin. I mean, we're off-screening things. This is why I love this build so much, and this is why I actually prefer it over Twisting Blades for just completing Nightmare Dungeons, which is, the most of the time that you spend in Diablo 4, you're just doing Nightmare Dungeons, right? But yeah, we're just going to go down here, getting Aftermath, so we get extra resource when we activate our Shadow Clone. But you may be able to drop this completely. It's just, in the earlier stages, you're not going to have Tibaults. So before Tibaults, you can get whatever pair of pants you want, just get some life and damage reduction. That'll be great. Get extra movement speed, and then obviously, yeah, we want Victimize. This is what makes the build the build. Now, as far as the Paragon board, this is usually just better if I just link it for you guys, but starting right off, I'll just mention that the boards, so you guys at least have it. So we're doing the starter board Ranger, and then we're going to be moving up to Tricks of the Trade with Exploit, and then we are going to be getting Exploit Weakness with Turf. Even though we are a ranged build, most of the time things are going to be very close to us. We can dash towards them, so getting things like Turf where it does like damage to like closer enemies, it's totally fine for the build, because most of the things in this game are also going to be melee. So after we get Exploit Weakness, we are actually going to go back up over here, and we're going to be getting No Witness with Control, so we deal more damage through crowd control. That's why we got to use Penitent Greaves. It's just one of the best multipliers in the game in terms of like our bonus damage, and since we run Penitent Greaves, it's excellent. Then we're going to go back down to the second Paragon board and go and get Cunning Stratagem, which is going to give us Pride. So it's going to give us some more damage to injured as well as healthy enemies. I'm just going to fast forward the gameplay so you can see more of the dungeons. This is like monster level like 105, which honestly, if you're just doing monster level like, there is a breakpoint where you can get the item power 925. You don't have to go to sigil like 100 to actually get the bonus of the item power, but it does get better as you go along, and this build has no problem killing the monsters. Now, the bosses are going to be a little bit tougher. Unless you drag them to the corner, you're just getting multiple pops. That's where, again, Twisting Blades would, in theory, be better. And then we're going down and we're getting the Cheap Shot with Combat as one of the last ones. In terms of like some of the bigger nodes, I like Exploit Weakness. I think that one's okay. And No Witness is getting a nice buff, but I would only really use our ultimate against like bosses normally. But because this build is running Preparation, you can just spam it whenever. It just allows you to have like a big bonus damage, and it's supposed to scale off your ultimate. Honestly, if you want to, you could probably drop this, but it'll give you a nice little DPS boost. And you can see in terms of the gameplay, well, it's showing off how much duration that we have on the Shadow Clone, but you might be able to keep this up a little bit. Don't expect 100% uptime. With Twisting Blades, you can get like your stuff up a lot more, which is another benefit technically of Twisting Blades. But at the end of the day, I like this build for clearing out Nightmare Dungeons, and since you do that most of the time in your gameplay, I like this build over Twisting Blades. So in terms of, is this better than Twisting Blades, because it's just the frequently asked question, it's better in clearing out small monsters, but on some of the uber bosses, you may want to consider swapping to, let's say, Rapid Fire. But if you don't like swapping, drag the boss to the corner and it'll be much easier. I don't know how the uber bosses mechanics work. I don't know if they spawn smaller adds. If they spawn some small adds, this build will absolutely dominate. But if they don't, try to drag the boss to the corner so you can get it to bounce. Remember, how the Eagle Horn works is it can bounce multiple times. Can we go over the full effect? Oh, it's kind of cut off here. But basically, Eagle Horn has a chance to bounce. In the gameplay, I have a perfect one, which is 80%, because I play the game 30 hours a day. But even if it's not like perfect, don't worry too much about it. It can bounce. Once it activates the bounce, it bounces 5 times. So that's kind of how the thing works in terms of its like max value. So in theory, you could hit the same target 6 times with one shot, but it's very, very unrealistic to just get your DPS and just be like, oh, I do 6 times damage if I put it in a corner. Sometimes it just bounces and you have no control over where it goes. But that's going to be wrapping it up for the build guide for the best penetrating shot build, and have some fun with it, guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn that bell, and I'll update you guys with any changes if there are any changes necessary for the build, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.